Now, the police crime statistics for 2015 have been released, and according to the police data, there are 27 crime categories, and only 11 of them decreased between 2014 and 2015. Crime has increased by 0.09%. That's a total of 2.206 million crimes committed in the period 2014 to 2015, and 2.204 million reported in 2014. So we'll add those together. But to shed a little bit more light about this is Gareth Newham, who is the head of the Governance, Crime and Justice Division for the Institute of Security Studies. We contacted the Ministry of Police, but unfortunately the Minister was not available to join us on this particular interview, but we will certainly make sure that we get him in at a later date. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the programme.
Thank you very much for having me.
So we look at, I suppose, you know, one of the many startling figures, but murder increasing by 4.6%. If we look at previous figures, is it quite a dramatic increase?
Yes, well, the main concern with murder is that it has been going up for 3 years in a row now. And murder being our most reliable crime statistic, because they're usually a body you can independently count, we use that as a key measure of the extent and nature of violence in our society. So murders occur because of individuals who get into fights, arguments which escalate, often involving alcohol, and one of the parties gets killed. That's about 2 out of every 3 murders, interpersonal violence we call it. About 20% are related to armed robberies. So when people get attacked on the streets or in their homes by armed criminals who want to steal from them, that can drive the murder up because people get killed if they resist or they get shot in those incidents. And then there's group violence or public violence. So we get vigilantism, xenophobic attacks, taxi warfare, gang warfare, and those contribute another 15% or so in total to the murder picture. So that category of murder it contains a variety of different types of scenarios in which murder occurs. So when it's going up, we really need to understand what the issues are. And South Africa performed very well in terms of watching murder go down for most of the last, well, for 18 years. We saw murder halving until about 2011, 2012 financial year. And then suddenly it started going up, and it's gone up every year persistently. So this is no longer a spike or an uptick. This means that in the most recent crime statistics, there were 2,200 more people, or 6 people more every day in South Africa being murdered than there was 3 years ago. So this is really a serious, serious matter.
It certainly is. And I mean, when you break it down and you look at the figures that you released yesterday, in a nutshell, 49 murders are committed daily in South Africa.
Yes, and that's more than 5 times the global average for murder. So we're up in the top countries when it comes to murder rates.
Yeah. Also attempted murders, that's also a big issue. 48 attempted murders a day?
Yeah, that's also a crime that's obviously quite linked to murder. You usually see the trends for murder and attempted murder are quite close. When somebody's shot or there's an attack on somebody, a case of attempted murder is usually open. So you'll find that those 2 categories go up quite a lot together. You know, the big correlation with murder has been armed robbery, and I think that's the one statistic that we also track very closely, because that is a measure of the extent to which criminals are getting organized and attacking people in the streets, in their homes, in their workplaces, hijacking cars. And it's a crime that the police can get on top of. So we've seen very good policing strategies. When we look at this internationally, in different parts of the world, the police, when they really have a clear strategy, they use their intelligence effectively and their detectives, and they think very creatively about how to get on top of these groups, they can do it, because murders are committed by a relatively small number of people who do it over, I mean not murders, robberies, who do it over and over again. So a group will decide they're going to make a living out of attacking houses, and that group will attack a number of houses every single year. Similarly, you'll get individuals or small groups who decide they'll make a living by attacking people who are walking on the streets, you know, coming from work or going to the shops using public transport, typically in the early mornings or early evenings when it's dark, and they'll do it over and over again. So if the police are carefully looking at where these cases are occurring and strategically deploying the resources, and when they catch these guys, making sure that they do full fingerprints, look at their cell phone data, who they're selling the goods they're stealing from to, they can get on top of it. So in Gauteng, for instance, using a strategy like I've just kind of mentioned, the Gauteng police were able to reduce house robberies by 20%, business robberies by 19%, and carjacking by 32% in 2 years, 2009 to 2011. So that we've seen robberies going up for 3 years now is very worrying. The police have the resources, the technology, the experience. We've got very good police officials, but those resources are not being effectively rallied behind and focused on the robbery problem. And the longer it's ignored, the more and more people will start attacking, more groups will get organized,
Indeed.
the more people will start dealing in stolen goods. It creates a whole lot of other problems because the syndicates that buy stolen goods from robberies will trade those goods to bring in drugs to the country, for instance, to bring in more firearms, to bring in more contraband. So the networks get stronger, they get more wealthier, they can corrupt government officials more easily. So we simply cannot rest and watch this robbery rate going up. We have to see a change in police strategy as a matter of urgency.
Well, I mean, I was reading one of the newspapers because obviously that's one of the, you know, every newspaper, that's probably the lead story in it. But particularly focusing in on the issue of drugs, and that someone was quoted as saying that South Africa is now taking over from Nigeria as the drug capital and the drug hub because we're just distributing so much and drugs are so prevalent in here. Is that something you look at as well in these crime stats?
Well, it's a measure of the crime stats. But when you look at the drug cases in the crime statistics, it's actually not a measure of the amount of drug use or drug dealing. It's really a measure of police performance. So. Often when that category goes up, you'll see people saying, oh my goodness, there's a drug usage or drug dealing is increasing. It's not. It's that the police are arresting more drug dealers, drug users, and every time they make an arrest, they add that case to it. So it's very much an indicator of the police focus on the drug situation. So if drugs goes up, it's not necessarily that there's more drugs that are being used, it's just that the police are focusing on it more. So it's usually a good news indicator. It means that the police are working harder, are doing more roadblocks, are making more arrests. But when we look at other indicators, such as the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, they report on drug use internationally in different countries. They look at the sort of trends and the patterns of drugs flowing in other countries, look at seizure rates, how much is being seized. So yes, it's linked to the organised crime challenge. Our police are very much focused on these sort of big operations like Operation Fearler, which is quite a blunt tool. You know, you circle an area off where you think there might be criminals or a few criminals hiding there, and you go and you search every house and you search people who are in that area. You sometimes arrest people involved in these kind of syndicates, but most of the time they're very aware, they're tracking the police, they'll move out of those areas. You've got to have good crime intelligence, you've got to track the networks, and most of the time the people that you're going to be arresting and breaking, and the charges for syndicates that you want to break down will be in the Prevention of Organised Crime Act, money laundering, racketeering, that kind of thing. It's not necessarily the sort of the street level stuff that we'll see, dealing in drugs, robbing cars, but they're linked. And that we're not getting on top of the most prevalent or most visible sign of organised crime, these robberies, means that we're not getting on top of the syndicates that support these robbers. So it really is something that we have to change, because what the police have been doing for the last 3 years is clearly not working. We have to do something different.
So we look at the police commissioner has been repeatedly on about the fact that we need to protect our women and children in the country, and that is a major priority. Looking at these crime stats, is that priority working? I mean, where do women and children fit into all of this? Well,
the categories where crimes against women and children often recorded are in your assaults, and your sexual assaults, particularly rape. Now, the police have a category called total sexual offences. Unfortunately, it's not a very meaningful category because it contains well over 50 different kinds of crimes. Public indecency, distribution of pornography that's illegally made, including rape. Now that is mostly rape, but it's gone down by 5%. So it's kind of pitched as a good news, but it's not really. The National Victims of Crime Survey that is undertaken by Statistics South Africa every year shows that between 2011 and 2014, the number of women who were raped and said that they also reported it to the police dropped by 20%. So that means that the police are getting fewer and fewer rapes reporting to them. It's not that rape's going down, it's just that fewer victims are feeling that the police don't help them, they're scared of going to the police, they don't think the criminal justice system will work, so they stop reporting. So we see this big reduction, and in some places, particularly like in the Western Cape, in Limpopo, you see every single violent crime indicator going up and you see rape going down. We don't think it's a measure that rape's going down.
It's just that ladies are not reporting it anymore.
They don't think they're going to get the support they need from the police.
You broke it down into provinces for us with that particular statistic, but in South Africa, which province has the highest murder rate or the highest crime statistics reported?
Well, Western Cape, right, in the most recent crime statistics, has now taken the lead as the province with the highest risk of being murdered, almost twice more likely to be murdered in the Western Cape than you are in Gauteng. It used to be the Eastern Cape. So the worst performing provinces at the moment are Western Cape, Gauteng and Limpopo. Those are three provinces where we've seen most of the violent crime categories with quite some notable increases. The provinces that were doing the best or having the biggest, or the crime situation has changed for the best in those provinces have been the Eastern Cape. We've also seen some good movements in KwaZulu-Natal and a mixed bag in Mpumalanga and the Free State.
Okay.
But yeah, it's really the Western Cape, Gauteng and Limpopo that are the provinces where we see the serious problems taking place now.
All right, thank you for talking to us here on the program. Gareth Newham, who is the head of the Governance, Crime and Justice Division for the Institute of Security Studies, talking to us about the 2014-2015 police crime stats that were released yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us. You're more than welcome to write into us, give us your views. I know it's not a feel-good story at all when you look and you dig into those crime stats, but we'd love to hear from you. And what do you feel more needs to be done?